are probably my top 3 for those subtle things that you don't necessarily like pay attention to, but those are the things that kind of draw you in because everything feels just so good to do.
Yeah.
Every action just feels rewarding.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Reticence Games podcast. I'm Nick.
I'm Arman.
And we are game developers as well as lifelong gamers. And in today's episode, we have a fun one because we are going to be talking about what makes games fun and fun games like from our past. So beyond just like being like, oh, that was cool, I think what we're going to do is dive into more about like specifically mechanically what makes the game fun, what kind of draws you in. And I think we're picking from lists of games where it's like you could kind of just pick it up anytime, play a bit of it and be like, oh man, that was really rewarding. That was a good experience. So also games that don't really have lulls, because there's some games that are like some of my favorite games of all time, but I would say that they have like long periods of like where you're
collecting crap and just like, or
a good one is like Persona 5. Like that's one of my favorite games of all time, but I wouldn't necessarily be like, that was fun the whole time sort of thing, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, before we dive into the main episode, I do want to bring up that we finally have a release date for our game, April 11th. You can check it out on Steam. Please wishlist. That would really, really help us out. But yeah, Traveler's Refrain is coming to Steam April 11th. We just made a huge announcement, and I'll put a clip of the new trailer in there as well. But yeah, hop in our Discord, and if you see the trailer, let us know what you think. And we're always around to talk games as well.
Yeah, and thanks to all those who've been sharing and liking the posts on X and on TikTok and things like that. So that's much appreciated, and thank you.
Yeah. So as you guys can see, I got a new shirt, and this is what made me think about the topic today. But I mean, Kirby, man, Kirby is just pure joy, you know.
Yeah.
And have you played any Kirby games? Now that I think about it.
I played Super Smash Brothers.
I mean, it kind of counts. He does the same thing.
Yeah.
But I think
I don't think I've ever played a Kirby game.
Part of the joy of Kirby is his Smash Brothers like move, which is like sucking in the enemies and becoming, that character and kind of using their abilities. So I think it's that. I think it's also the fact that like most Kirby's are not meant to be like hard games, especially because they're like geared towards, a younger audience. But sometimes it's nice to play a game that's not overly difficult. It does. I would say most, especially older Kirby games, don't even have that thing where it's like, oh, there's like the hard challenge areas. It's more just like, no, this is just fun, relaxing. The music is really, joy. Yeah, this big smile on your face. Yeah.
Smiles, joy, happiness.
Everything's like really colorful, and
pink
it's like,
puffs. Yeah.
how could you not like the little pink puffball,
King DDD. And then the
Meta Knight.
Waddle Dee.
And the Waddle Dees, yeah.
And the Spike Boys.
Yeah. But yeah, man, those games are just like really fun, and I think that's a good like jumping off point to sort of showcase where our minds are at. It's just like games where you just like, I don't know.
I think for me, it's games that you just pick up and you're like, wow, this is fun.
Yeah.
There's been a couple games in my life that I picked them up and I'm like, wow, this is great. I need to buy it.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what we want to discuss, or at least what is it about those games that kind of drew us in and made us want to buy it.
Yeah. So I think it's partially like a world thing. It's partially like a art thing, and it's partially like a game design thing. So like with Kirby, it's obviously like the colorfulness of it, the really like bright and happy music. But it's also the fact that like the mechanic is really cool and it's unique to the character. I mean, I can't really imagine many other characters like sucking in enemies and then sort of like becoming them. That would be kind of weird. So it just, his design, goes with his mechanic, and it makes for something really unique because Kirby can literally be anything, So the other thing I'll say about Kirby in particular is like he has the little floating thing. So it's like, it's not like in Mario where you're like, oh, I really got to time my jumps like crazy and stuff like that. Like it's very forgiving, and that makes it very fun because you're not really frustrated.
Right.
I think there's some games on this list that are frustrating and they're still kind of fun, but sometimes you just want something to chill out. Some of the things I wrote down thinking about mechanics is like an outstanding main mechanic. So like Kirby's sucking thing. Another one I've talked about in a previous podcast that I think does not get enough love, and I really want you to play it at some time because I know you've had ideas of a kind of similar mechanic, is Gravity Rush. Like, dude, I've never played anything like it before because you feel like you're flying, but what you're doing is you're just going with gravity. So you aim the camera and then you press a button and she just like falls in that direction. So it's not like she's flying forward, she's falling in that direction, but you can fall up, you can fall straight, you can fall down, whatever. And there's kind of like floating islands everywhere. So you're using this mechanic to like get her and navigate her around like, you know, different parts of the map.
Right.
Also fighting enemies like in a bunch of space where they're like coming at you from all angles and you're kind of having to angle the camera around. It's just like really, really interesting.
Yeah, I should probably play that for some reference material.
Yeah, and I've got it on PS4, so I can lend it to you. But yeah, that's one. Another one that I thought of mechanic wise that's like a main feature mechanic is the building mechanic in Tears of the Kingdom. And I know some people kind of have differing opinions on how that worked, but because I'm like a Lego guy and like a Gundam builder, dude, when they were like, you can take pieces of things and make cool machinery, I was like, hell yeah, I am so on board for this. And using that to solve the puzzles was obviously the most, you know, unique thing about that game, especially jumping off of Breath of the Wild. But, you know, that's another good example of just like a big feature that's like, okay, this is just really, really fun. Every time I do it, I'm like interested.
Right. So yeah, so I kind of want to take it to like a deeper level on what makes things more fun, because you kind of touched on a lot of like the actual things within the game content that is fun. But for me, I think if we break fun down to the core mechanics, what exactly makes those things fun, right? So in my opinion, those things are basically like responsiveness, first of all. The game needs to feel very responsive. There needs to be very good feedback. So when you do something in the game, you have to be rewarded either visually, auditorily, or through some type of other reward, right? And then the third one is I think audio and music are probably my top three for those subtle things that you don't necessarily like pay attention to, but those are the things that kind of draw you in because everything feels just so good to do. Like every action just feels rewarding. The snap of like, you know, hitting something with like in Zelda, you hit something, it's pop, you know, like, and then like
big particle effects.
And then you get that feedback, you get the auditory feedback. They drop something on the ground when they die. It's like all these things kind of wrap up.
You pick it up and then it goes blue, blue. You know, something like that.
Yeah. So I think a combination of all these different factors is what makes games fun. And it's up to each developer to understand how to put that into their game, how to take the mechanics of their game and make them rewarding for people to play. And some people love that like slow grind type of thing. Like I said, maxing out stats and things like that. It could take a while to build up to something like that. But for my examples in particular, I'm just talking about like you pick up a game, you play it for a minute. What's going to draw you in to keep playing it?
So that's, you put this in a really good direction because now I can like more thoroughly explain some of the things that we just talked about. And like, we could be like, okay, why was this specifically fun? So going back to the building thing, beyond just me liking building in Tears of the Kingdom, it's like, what about the mechanic itself was so good? And part of it was the fact that it was very easy to do, even though you can make really complex things. So they didn't limit you on like rotating stuff and like, you know, like a fan, putting a fan on a plank. I guess let's like use that as an example, right? You could put the fan right in the middle of the plank. You can put it at the end of the plank. Depending on where you put it, it's going to like tilt the plank up, but then if Link stands in the middle, he's going to kind of balance it out. So you're kind of like having to analyze these little physics things that they teach you slowly but surely as you, I think they teach you a lot of the main stuff on that island first, right? You start off on that like kind of island with the
in the
orange
sky?
trees.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And that's where you're kind of learning the basics.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you start to figure out like, I really can like make a bridge out of logs that's like 40 feet long as I balance it correctly, like stuff like that. So yeah, like you said, it's like that feedback of knowing, okay, I can put something here and it makes that nice like sticky noise,
Yeah, sticky noise. But I think also it's a low barrier to entry.
Yeah.
Like you can just put two things together.
Yeah.
And it's like you don't need to know anything about anything. You
Yeah.
just, here's this thing, bang.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that is what is such a low barrier of entry, and it's just fun because you're like you said, you're not restricted to anything really. You can just do whatever you want. And I mean, that's what drew me into that game. I was playing that game for so many hours.
I think it's the game I put the most amount of hours into ever. Yeah. Another one I want to touch on, if we're kind of analyzing the mechanics, I know you haven't played this, but just the swinging mechanic in Spider-Man, I feel like I've let you just swing around before.
I don't think so.
Time. No.
Oh yeah, when you let me borrow your PS5, remember?
I had it on PS4. Either way.
Yeah.
But either way, what's really cool about that is the fact that he only sticks to objects like in the his web only sticks to like actual things. It's not like he's shooting his webs into the sky and you're like, swing. That's so funny. I'm trying to be serious.
Okay, go on. Sorry.
I'm just saying, like, you can't like swing like from the clouds. So
right.
So if you're
it has to be reasonable.
It has to, well, beyond reasonable, like you literally can see where the point of connection is. So like if you're in Central Park.
One game that I picked up that I was like, this, I remember I was in the store with my friend Mark, and we went to GameStop, and I went to the kiosk, and they had like a couple games for demo there. And I was playing, and one of the games was Resident Evil 4. And I clicked the demo, and I turned it on. It's like the first level where you like fight the Ganados.
Yeah.
And I just walked in,
like
and
in a little town.
And you're not even in the town yet. You're just like, it's before the town. It's like a little house. And I remember like shooting with the pistol that you get in the beginning was like the pop and like the mechanics of like you shooting them, and they like, you know, they like twitch when you shoot like if you shoot their leg, they fall.
Yeah.
You know, if you shoot their shoulder, they like pop back. Like those, I felt that was really new at the time. Like those kinds of physics.
I didn't play a lot of games where you like shoot with guns. That was probably one of my first ones, but I specifically remember, shooting with any of the guns being like, whoa, you can feel the force.
Yeah. You felt the force, and the sounds were so poppy and snappy, and the reactions that you got from the enemies was really good. And also like the ammo drop rate was good. Like it never felt like, well, I played on normal in the beginning, but the ammo drop rate was really good. It never felt like you were like desperate for ammo. It always seemed to just kind of come as you needed it.
Yeah.
Which that was another part of the fun factor for me. But that was one of the games that I picked up, and I was just like, wow, I have to buy this. Yeah. And I went and bought it the next day.
So one for me that I'm thinking of is Celeste was very, very fun. And I think it's because it had that like arcadey sense. Like you obviously don't need to put quarters into it, but it had that feel of like you die, you start again, you die, you start again. And it was always like you kept getting closer and closer to figuring out the complicated puzzle that was ahead of you. And it was never, I mean, some of the later levels are really freaking hard, but it was never hard to understand what was expected of you. It was more executing the jumps that was the difficult part. So like you could always see like, okay, there's like a little thing down here. I gotta fall down here and try to catch that and then jump off, sort of thing.
Right.
So yeah,
I haven't played it in a long time. What were the mechanics again? Is it just jump?
Literally run and double jump. I think I forget what it is. I think there's little crystals too, and if you fall in them, that's when you get the extra jump or something like that.
What made Celeste so popular?
Her hair.
Yeah. What is it that Celeste apart from
I think
all the
it's
other
I think
games?
it's literally that the fact that it's like just fun. Like it's
But
uh
what made it fun? Like, what sets Celeste's platforming different from? I mean, I've seen so many of these platformer type games that look
because
just like
other
Celeste, but
okay, so other platformers you have a whole level you're trying to get through. Like you're trying to get from the start of the level to the end of the level. This is like you're literally in a room and it's like how do I solve this puzzle?
mm,
Most platformers are just like I'm running, there's some enemies, jump on the enemy, try to gauge how big this gap is, I try to jump over it, whatever. I'm always like trying to get to the end. That's the objective. This is like I have to solve the puzzle that's on the map. And then it's like you go to the next room and then it's the next thing.
mm,
So it's like there's like hundreds of levels or 100 levels whatever, but they're like mini. And I think that's what makes it fun is because it's like a bite-sized puzzle as opposed to just like
mm,
this is just a longer test of my dexterity.
I see.
Because a lot of these platformers, like we were talking about Mario last time, that's a good example. Remember, I was telling you in that Mario 3D
Mm-hmm.
world, like that one level is like impossible for me because it was like 3 minutes long trying to get to the end. Then I just kept dying at the end. This is like if you do everything correctly, you're going to get through the little map in like 30 seconds
Mm.
or less, you
In
know,
Celeste,
in Celeste. They're like really quick. Some
I
of them
remember
are,
like you beat the levels and then like the like map reorganizes or something. Doesn't it do something like that where it's like you're in these like different pockets that you go to, and then at the end it like reorganizes the level into like
I don't think
I don't know, maybe
remember
I'm
that.
just making that up, but I remember something like that from
What it
Celeste.
what it does is it zooms out and there's like a 3D mountain that it kind of shows you where you are. And I think that was the other thing. This isn't necessarily going with the fun factor, but the reason that game was so popular too was it was a really like meaningful story in a very compact way of storytelling. So it's like there's only like a handful of like NPC interactions, but it's very like thought provoking of her struggle up the mountain and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So so yeah, I think a lot of fun is having to do with obviously like moment to moment stuff and just like that like you said that feel of the rewarding factor. So in
Mm-hmm.
Celeste it's like you feel super accomplished when you've like completed one of these puzzles because you're like not only like oh I figured out how to do this puzzle but I was dexterous enough to get through it as well.
See, I would find a game like that to probably be like fun, but it's also like frustrating.
It can
So
be
it'd be
it can definitely be frustrating, but um all right, what else do we want to talk about?
um well, I guess we could talk a bit about roguelites because
Sure.
roguelite games are you've played more roguelites than me, obviously, like you're a big Hades guy. We both are played our fair share of Hades, but
Hmm.
I guess and also games like Balatro and Inscription, right? Those are all games where like it's just you never know what's gonna happen
Balatro is a
on this run.
roguelite, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think it's you never know what's going to happen and it feels obviously there are a limit to the possibilities, but it feels like there's limitless possibilities in what you can do throughout the run.
right, because things come in a different order
Yeah.
every time. So, the game just always feels fresh, and I think that's why these games have been so successful in the last like
Mhm.
5 to 6 years, right? You keep seeing like, oh, roguelite this, roguelite that, roguelite
Mhm.
this, and like everything's doing roguelite. It's because it's kind of like a hack, right?
It
Roguelite's a bit of a
is.
hack, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like you can just make all this content that can appear on its own in
Mhm.
different order, and it always feels fresh to different gamers. One thing that of course that lacks is maybe you might have trouble telling a story because
Yeah.
your game is too busy giving the player too many fun experiences one after another. There's no
Well,
time
too
to
many
build a story.
opportunities to do stuff.
Right.
Like
Now,
different
can there be an instance where it's like a linear game or like a story-based game with roguelite elements in between the story beats? That could
Mhm.
be something interesting.
I mean, Hades
Hades is kind of like
has that.
that. Yeah.
I would say that out of all their games, I might get some flack, has probably one of the weaker stories in my opinion. It's got a very deep story, but it's not a very like complicated story. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, I think that is the biggest downfall, and especially like we're story guys, it's kind of hard to think about how you even would approach doing. Now, actually, you know what? You know what did a really good job with storytelling is Returnal.
Mm.
That game had a lot of cool moments because you would get to a certain, like, you know how these roguelites all usually work. It's like there's worlds essentially, and you're trying to get through like 5 worlds
Mm-hmm.
by the end of the thing. In this, it was like as soon as you get through one world, there would be some sort of storytelling beat that's like explaining like the lore or the character's past, and every time you would get there it would tell you a different story like element. So like yeah, Hades kind of does that, but you have to go through the whole run and get back to the beginning to get more of the like big story stuff. This was like throughout the game you were still getting those little pieces, which I think was cool. Like I remember at one point there's just like this, like it's like a sci-fi game, but you see like this old looking like house, and you go in the house and like you get a key or something, and then you can bring the key to a place on a different run to like open up a new thing. So that was actually a very interesting way to do that. Actually, that's actually, now I forgot about that game kind of, but that game had me hooked, man. And specifically what was so fun about that was it was bullet hell but in 3D.
Mm.
So like you're just constantly like dodging, big waves of bullets, and there's something just about like the timing of dodging and shooting and having different types of guns to defeat enemies. That's another like, you're building your character kind of thing. What about like I what about like an adventure in itself? Like can that in itself be like a fun element? Like the quest you're on. Because that's not really like it's not really easy to place like, oh, this is a specific mechanic or a specific like feedback thing, as you've been saying.
Yeah, I think it's easier when you're playing with friends.
Mm.
Like for example, World of Warcraft is an easy one because you go on a quest together, and it's like you and your friend. You just kind of like adventure out and like, hey, let's go do this quest. Oh, like watch out for that like enemy. Haha.
Yeah.
Like,
You're kind of like almost making like a meta story on top of the story that you're
right.
given.
You're making a story with your friend by
Yeah.
like, or you're creating your own stories with your friend by going on that adventure with them in this game, right? So yeah, I think it's enhanced when you have more people to enjoy it with. Not to say that story games aren't fun. Obviously, they're very fun, but they take more time to absorb and find, because a lot of the fun comes in like finding out what the story's about, like unveiling certain story beats throughout the game, and then getting new power ups and things like that. So upgrading the character. So I think it's just a little more difficult with story games, but obviously we were just kind of focusing on like games
like
mechanically, yeah.
Yeah.
Those still fall into the category, right? You're still getting like rewards every now and then, but they're just a little more spaced out. So
something else I was thinking about when you were talking about feedback is like collectibles, and how that can be fun. Now, obviously, people have this tendency to like complete a set of something or whatever. You use the thing to like improve your character, and it's kind of like there is 2 ways to approach this, right? Like even with our game, like it was kind of like near the end of development that we were looking at some of the ways the feedback was being given to the player. We're like, let's pump this up, right? So I guess we could use an experience from Traveler's Refrain where you get the 4 music sheets to get an extra one of your verve notches. And we already had like the little pages that flip around, and the humming you hear when you get near it. So it kind of like draws you in, like, oh, there's a collectible in the area, encourages you to want to do the puzzle or whatever to get it.
Yeah.
And then you pick it up, and it shows the little, it's almost like the heart pieces in Zelda. You get the 4 of them, whatever. but then we're like, we got to add to that. So we're like, okay, let's have the verve notch like pop in, and I think we've got the little like notes like exploding out of it, right?
Is it out of the thing? I think we just have the thing at the top, and then
the little verve blip going,
yeah, on the top
and
left,
there's like
yeah.
the feedback. So yeah, it's kind of like,
We also play a sound when you pick it up, and
yeah,
there's animation and everything. So.
Yeah, he like does the little snatch animation. So it's like without any of that, like you just walk up to the thing and you press A and you collect it and it just shows it in the corner without any feedback.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, would that be fun? Would that be rewarding to get? You know?
If it had the right sound effect, maybe.
Yeah, but do you think even just the sound, you could get away with it? But I guess that's what's separating these games from us being like you're saying, like you pick it up, you're like, whoa, this is really fun. So we have Inscription on the list, right? One of the things that really stood out to me, and it's like, this isn't the thing that makes the game fun, but it's an element added on to all the other elements that it's like, this whole experience is fun. So for example, like you get your cards and then the one card just like starts talking to you.
Yeah.
You remember that? The little character, like he's like moving inside your card.
Yeah.
So it's like stuff like that where you're just like, oh, this is really cool.
Yeah.
On top of a very fun card game that's relatively simple to understand because they teach it to you in like the first whatever, like little tutorial.
Well, you also get to like craft your own card in it.
Oh yeah.
Like towards, I don't know if it's towards the end. It's in the beginning part. You get to craft your own character. Like I had a Umak card and it had like like a bunch of attack points and like some other effects on it.
Yeah.
It was kind
I
of
kind of remember that.
And then you could randomly find it in your deck, which is really cool. So they always had like these little tidbits. But I think like the whole atmosphere of that game just drew you in. It was just like when you start playing, you're like, whoa, what is going on?
Yeah.
'Cause everywhere you turned, it was like something interesting was happening.
Yeah.
So.
And I think it changed up what you were seeing so much. Like there's different like styles of art, and like, you know, you're in it's almost like an escape room, and then it's a card game, and then you're like in a 3D area, and it's like there's so much stuff going on that it just keeps hooking you. And you know, there's something to be said about, it's like, you know, there's always this joke of today's age where it's like people like can't pay attention to anything, but at the same time, it's kind of like, yeah, obviously you're going to be entertained the whole time if you're constantly being introduced to like new and interesting stuff.
Right.
What were we talking about last week or the week before? We're like, man, I can't believe that the game just keeps throwing mechanics at you. We were talking about God of
Odyssey?
War. No, it wasn't Odyssey. Oh man, what was it? I can't really remember.
The game keeps throwing mechanics at you.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, man, this game, like, I couldn't believe that there's. Oh, maybe it was just Hades. Maybe I was talking about Hades, where it's like 50 hours into the game, they keep having new stuff,
right? Maybe
for you to do. So I feel like that's an interesting way that game design is going, and kind of going back to what I was talking about with, I'm really interested to see how this. I feel like the new Assassin's Creed is not gonna change up the formula too much, but I feel like people are getting bored of games that are just big games that you do the same thing a million times.
Right.
Like I feel like I'm seeing that thing less and less.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, you know better than me. I don't know. I do know that I had open world fatigue a long time ago.
Yeah.
But that's also because I just started doing other things with my life. But
well, here's one. You played Cyberpunk and you loved that game.
Yeah.
Did that feel like, did you get kind of open world fatigue from that, or did that feel like they were changing stuff up on you?
I didn't finish it, but it felt very much like a GTA. Like there, you just kind of walk around and there's just stuff to do everywhere. And yeah, it's hard to explain. Like you could really just do. You make your own journey, I guess. You can go and do like the main storyline, or you can go do like meet some new characters and, you know, change the course of your character's path. Like I said, I didn't finish it, but there's a lot of mechanics you can spec into, like the whole hacking mechanics. I started specking into like the hacking mechanics, and then you can do like melee weapons. You can get these like blades that come into your arms. Forgot a lot of the mechanics because a lot of the controls and stuff because they're very specific, but I'm sure if I got back into it, I would remember.
Because if it's anything like The Witcher, like that was definitely not a game where you're like, all right, here's the same base camp. I'm killing the same enemies. I felt like every single quest in The Witcher was like at least moderately interesting what you were doing.
Yeah.
Even all the side quests and stuff.
Yeah. I think the cool thing with The Witcher was you would kind of like divert down a path and there would just be this whole quest line there.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, you just get like sucked away into this like different quest line, and all the characters like talk to you and like these cutscenes, like, oh, like my daughter turned into a pigeon.
Yeah.
Help me.
Yeah.
You must help me, sir.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, like I guess this is what I'm doing for the next 30 minutes. So yeah, I love that aspect of The Witcher is that it just felt so fresh every time. You kind of, as you're walking around, you just find a different quest line or a giant monster that you need to take out. Those are really cool too. People like running away from it and you have to go and help them, type of thing. So
yeah. So after this discussion, it's kind of feeling like the major things are either an outstanding feature that's just like you never get bored of it because it's just so interesting, or so simple and like simple to, what is it, pick up, difficult to master kind of thing.
yeah.
Or it's an experience that's like continuously fresh the whole time.
Yeah.
And you're constantly engaged.
Yeah, because there's games that are, everybody's definition of fun is obviously different, but there are just some games that seem to just capture that in the majority of people.
Yeah, I think that's how you can kind of say for certain, like, yeah, that was good because millions of people played it and kind of had a similar opinion on it.
Right.
So even though you don't play Souls games, people do like them.
Yeah, I'll get to it.
Oh man,
I'll play Bloodborne first. How's that?
That was a good one to play first.
Yeah,
and that's on PS4.
I have it.
Yeah, there you go.
So
there you go.
Have it? Never played it.
Oh, you have Bloodborne?
I have Bloodborne. Yeah.
And you never even played it?
Yeah.
You're killing me, dude.
I'm sorry.
You're killing me,
sorry.
man. It's like so good. I think it's my favorite one out of all those games.
Yeah, I know. I obviously got it because I wanted to play it, but then my brother started playing it, and I just never got around to it. So at least somebody played it.
Are you into that like vibe, like the like gothic?
I like vampires and werewolves.
Oh, really?
Type thing. Yeah, it's like
you love it. Dude.
I know. I gotta play it.
Good. And also, I feel like you're a good gamer, so I'm curious to see how you
react.
Play a game like this that's like freaking hard,
Yeah.
Like you're
good
at like, easy games like Mario.
Yeah.
Or like being villager and like, guarding the edge of the level.
I played God of War. I remember I played God of War.
Yeah,
that game was hard. I played it on hard.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. And I had to turn it back down because I couldn't get past this one part. But I ended up like playing like half of the game on hard, and until I like was about to break my screen.
Yeah, screw that. I feel like with a story-based game, like I need it to be like in normal mode to just enjoy it.
Yeah. I always like play games and they're too easy on normal for me, but now it's like I'm getting to the point where I just want to beat the game.
Yeah.
So I just play it on normal, even though I sacrifice a bit of that fun.
I also think
myself.
though too, a lot of these games nowadays, even normal mode is like not super easy. Let's put it that way. So what do you think about that game? Like the new God of War is like in terms of fun, because I took really long breaks with both of them. I beat both of them, but like, and they're some of my favorite games ever. But like, that's not one that just jumps into my head of like, that was really fun,
I mean, God of War it's a masterpiece of a game, honestly. Like, but it's one of those games where like I beat it once and I'm kind of done with it. Like maybe I'll play it again in the future, but it was just a perfect game, like beginning to end. I thought the the mechanics were just so clean. Like
Mhm.
you could one of the things I'll point out is the shield. You could
Mhm.
shield at any moment. And I think
Yes.
that really adds to the fun of it, because if you're good at shielding, you just really don't take damage.
There's nothing worse than a game that has a shield where there's like you hit the button and then it's like a
Right.
delay,
A
you know?
delay, yeah. So I think the snappiness of the controls in that game,
Mhm.
the breadth of the abilities and stuff that you can do with like the timings and everything,
Mhm.
just it made it just feel so good to play.
Mhm.
And then there's obviously like the little puzzles where you collect like I forget what they were, the like purple, what were they, like talismans or something?
I don't remember.
Um, yeah. So the whole search mechanic where you like improve Kratos and things like that were also really really fun, because you felt good after completing them.
Yeah, I think the traversal in that game was not the most fun. Like it
Mm,
wasn't bad, but it's kind of like but
right.
I'm also like I don't know how I would have done it better, you
Yeah.
know? That's what's hard about some of
Like the
these
whole
like
lake thing and everything like
the
that.
lake and even just like climbing around the walls is like kind of sluggish. It's also like
Mm,
stuff I've done a million times in other games, you
true.
know? So that's why like a game like Gravity Rush was so
Yeah.
crazy to me cuz like I just liked making her fly around anytime. It like Spider-Man
Yeah.
just swinging whenever. Like sometimes I would just sit there and just swing around the city, do nothing but swing. So I know you can't do that
Yeah.
with every game, but it's kind of a testament to like what really makes it fun.
It makes me think of Hellblade too. You played
Mm.
Hellblade,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
That game was so much fun for me.
Really?
Because I love the combat.
The
It
combat was
felt
pretty cool.
so
Yeah.
cool. I mean, some of the world mechanics were kind of jank,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
but the concepts were really cool. Like they did some like non-Euclidean games where like style games where like you look through something and it's there, and then you look on the other side and it's
Yes,
gone.
that was cool.
That
Yeah, yeah.
type of stuff is super cool.
Yeah.
Just kept it feeling like very unique, and the combat felt so fun.
I think that's a good example too of like how they could have done God of War potentially
Yeah.
is like not necessarily go back to like old God of War where it's like levels, but Hellblade was still kind of it was very linear, right?
Yeah.
Like but it didn't feel like okay, level 1 is done. Now I'm on level 2. It felt like you were just going on this continuous sort of journey.
Right.
Um yeah, it's interesting. It's like I think a lot of these big studios that are pumping like tens or hundreds of millions into a game, like they kind of have to beef it up to justify that price point. And it's kind of like we've gotten to this point with games where it's like, all right, well, everyone else in AAA is doing these 80-hour long open worlds. I guess we need to do that too. So
No, we don't.
yeah, I agree. It's just kind of like going back to as a game dev, like how would you do it differently to make it more enjoyable for the duration you're playing? You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to think about.
Hmm.
All right, guys. Well, please go check out Traveler's Refrain on Steam. Go wishlist it. Game comes out April 11th, so in a couple weeks now, which is kind of crazy. We've been
Yep.
working on this thing for over 5 years, so it would really mean a lot if you wishlisted the game and come hang out in our Discord. But yeah, guys, we'll have another episode out next week, and we'll see you then.
Yeah.
Bye,
Thanks.
guys.